All right. Welcome. Welcome. We back again. Once again, time and time again, my friends. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday live streams doing a market breakdown on what I expect from the market is here. So, make sure you are subscribed. Turn the post notifications on to make sure you get updated when I do go live. The live streams will be in between 5:30 and 6:30 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So sometime in between then, I will start the live stream. Make sure you are tuned in. And we just going to kick it off real quick. Let's start off with BTC USD. We've been speaking about it. It is retesting previous structure resistance, now turn support. We started to have a bounce out of this area, and now we are starting to come into this area on the monthly. On the weekly, we have a nice and easy move up, move down, move up, move down. We came and completed the M formation at the neckline. Of course, let me toot my own horn, pat myself on the back. This is a pattern that completes 90 to 80% of the time in the market on all time frames. It did complete here, and it does set us up for a nice situation to see a continuation to the downside, but we are currently in a double bottom formation. And since we are retesting this area on the monthly, we can expect some sort of bullishness out of this area. If we do drop down on the daily time frame, we can see that we've had an extreme momentum push to the downside on the daily, pushing to the downside. We wanted to see market break above this area and come back retest it for a continuation to the upside, but it has now broken and closed below this area. So we are back in bearish territory on the daily. Further continuation could be expected if there is some sort of continuation to the downside in here. Pullback, retracement to the downside. Of course, again, 2024 is when the next halving event will happen. So that is when I expect BTC USD to make a move to the upside to retest previous highs or make a new higher high. But until then, we could just be playing around, looking for liquidity to make that move to the upside. Now we can slide over to XAU USD on the monthly. On the monthly, we are retesting previous structure support, now turn support. We are coming into that area. Once again, on the monthly, we did expect a rejection out of that area. We did get that. A little bit of rejection for the last week, but now we are starting to come into that area. If we do drop down on the weekly, we can see that this is the previous structure support, now turn resistance that would need to be broken to see the continuation to the upside. But as of right now, it is providing literally the most common pattern in the market to the downside. Impulse, retracement, and another impulse to the downside, completing the impulse retracement pattern. So there is further continuation to the downside. This is the overall expectancy area that I do see the market coming into. So once a tap in there, I could expect some retracements back to the upside, exactly as I would like to see if the market wants to go ahead and complete this move to the downside. So if it breaks these lower lows, then we could expect more movement to the downside until we get the full completion of the minus 272 of the retracement overall taken to the downside. Now, if we drop down to XAG USD, we were retesting previous structure support, now turn resistance, but we are starting to break above that. It is exciting to see what happened throughout the weeks, especially when we are looking for the exact thing that happens. So we do have a weekly M formation here, move to the upside, move to the downside, move back up, breaking structure to the downside. We came back, retraced, and completed the M formation exactly as we would like to see, to the perfect, to the T, 80 to 90% completion rate on that pattern. And now we are just in a situation where we could see the market trending to the downside. So low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low could be expected. But if we do drop down to the daily, on the daily, there could be more continuation to the upside. as we do have a nice and easy explosion to the upside, coming back for a retracement, a short retracement. What we wanted to see was a deeper retracement before we started to see the continuation to the upside. But since we had this short retracement, there could be some manipulation in this area. Going down to XBT USD Platinum on the monthly, we were retesting previous structure support. That has now turned support once again. So we had support in here, and then we retested it and exploded to the upside. And that is on the monthly. On the weekly, we can see that this double bottom is more prevalent. If we do look at it, we have the touch in here and the touch in here as well. So we could expect further continuation to the upside, which is what we've been planning on seeing. Now we wanted to see some sort of retracement before we started to see the continuation to the upside. But if we do look at the daily, we can see that we did get some short retracement, retesting previous structure resistance, now turned support once again. And we are starting to see the move to the upside. Excuse me. So further continuation to the upside could be expected on this pair. Now let's drop down to US oil. On US oil, exactly as we say, exactly as I say all the time, we have a perfect break of structure to the upside, coming back, retesting previous structure resistance that should now act as support. And we are starting to reject from that area, and that is on the monthly. If we drop down to the weekly, we can see we are exploding from that area with a nice and easy retest. We do also have this pattern here, one of my favorites, because we had to break down, create some support, immediately break back into the zone, come back, retest that left shoulder, and do not break below it and start to explode to the upside. Now, if we get further continuation and a retracement, we could look for the continuation to the upside on US oil. Euro USD monthly time frame, making moves to the downside. We're going to pick it up a little bit in speed here. On the weekly, we rejected previous structure support, now turned resistance, and we are making a move to the downside. And on the daily, we just made this extremely bearish candle showing a lot of momentum. Of course, this is my overall take profit for Euro USD. I want to see a move to the downside, completing this take profit here. But we did have the weekly W or M formation, completed at the neckline exactly as we would like to see. So 80 to 90 completion rate. Your boys like that. Move to the downside, come back, retest previous structure support, now acting as resistance to the neckline. Completed to the T. Of course, if you also want to learn how I take advantage of these moves and learn to take profit on these moves, you can click the link in the description. It will take you to the FX Savant University. But just exactly as we like to say, we want to see this daily retracement complete at the neckline before we see a continuation to the downside, which does put us up in a good situation to see further continuation to the downside to this area, maybe even lower. So that is Euro USD. If we drop down to GBP USD on the monthly time frame, we can see we are rejecting previous support, now turn resistance, making a move to the downside, and that is on the monthly. Weekly, we did have some sort of retracement. We came back and retested previous structure support that now acted as resistance right in this area. And if we do drop to the daily time frame, we can see we are retesting all this support down in this area. So it would be nice to see if we could get a break above some sort of this structure before we look for the continuation to the upside. But as it is right now, we could see further continuation to the downside with a nice and easy retracement, retesting this previous left shoulder right in this area. We have the head, and we could see another retest of the right shoulder before further continuation to the downside. AUD USD from the monthly. So last time we spoke about it, we had a previous structure support that was getting retested as previous structure resistance, or current now structure resistance, but from since then, we have made a move to the downside, retesting previous structure support that should now act as support once again with the double bottom. But if we do drop down to the daily time frame, we can see we've had extreme bearishness to the downside that could possibly provide a retracement. and further continuation to the downside. USD CAD on the monthly, making moves to the upside, creating higher lows all the way up. On the weekly, we are starting to push and retest previous structure highs on the weekly. And on the daily, we just made an extreme move to the upside with this daily candle pushing to the upside, retesting previous structure highs. Now, if we do get a break above this area, we could see the retracement and continuation to the upside. Now, once again, I'm going to pat myself on the back because we wanted to see the retracement for a weekly W formation completion, which is what we got, 80 to 90% completion rate. Move to the downside, move back up, overextended to the upside, came back and completed right at the neckline. Know what we talking about over here, man. The things that we talk about and things that I teach is fact and cannot be disputed. It happens over and over and over on all time frames with the 80 to 90 completion rate. And since then, we've had the explosion to the upside exactly as we like to see, because after a W formation completion, we are in what is called the most common pattern in the market. We have an impulse to the upside, breaking structure, coming back for a retracement, retesting previous structure, resistance, now acting as support. We want to see a higher high just created. So on the weekly, we are getting that from USD CAD. Now, if we drop down to the daily time frame, once again, we can see that everything's played out exactly as we'd like to see it. And if we do get a break above this previous structure resistance, now turn resistance, once again, we can expect higher prices. But if another retracement comes and sets us up perfectly for the continuation, we can look for a TMCP1 to the upside. Now, NZD USD from the monthly time frame. If we look at it from the monthly, we are starting to break below some previous structure support, now turn to resistance. If we look at it from the weekly, we can see that we did try to come and retest some of this area, and we wanted to see a break above this area. We did not get the full retest of the M pattern on the weekly, but we did get some sort of retracement, and now we've exploded to the downside for a further continuation that we will probably see. If we do get some sort of daily retracement that fits the rules and the strategies that we use, we can then look for the continuation to the downside. USD CHF from the monthly. If we look at the monthly time frame, we can see that we've had the literally perfect setup that we want to see. A move to the upside, breaking structure, coming back for the retracement. Another move to the upside, making an impulse to the upside, breaking structure, and a higher high. We can't move in one direction forever. So if we drop down to the weekly, we can see that we've had a W formation on the weekly. Move to the downside, move to the upside, come back, retrace, retest at the neckline perfectly to a T. 80 to 90 completion rate on the weekly. USD CHF, and now we are in a position to see further continuation to the upside after this retracement. So it would be more ideal to see a further break of some structure on the daily, or a creation of some structure and then a break of that structure before we start to look for continuations to the upside. USD JPY. On USD JPY, we've been saying that USD JPY has been making moves to the upside on the monthly. We are just waiting for a retracement on the weekly, and on the daily, we do have a double top rejection right in this area where we could see more continuation to the downside before a retracement and continuation to the upside starts. So it'd be nice to see if we get a retracement on USD JPY. GBP NZD monthly time frame. On the monthly, we are rejecting previous structure support, now turn support once again. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, we are starting to break structure to the upside. And on the daily time frame, if we do get some sort of nice retracement to retest some previous structure, that would set us up and put us in a good position to see the continuation to the upside exactly as we would like to see. So if we got some sort of retracement out of this area and saw the continuation, we could capitalize on that. GBP CHF monthly time frame, making moves to the downside, retesting previous lows. On the weekly, a bit overextended. On the daily, it would take some sort of retracement right in this area before we could look for the continuation to the downside. But if it breaks above previous structure support, now turned resistance, then we would need to see it break above some major daily resistance before we start to look for continuations to the upside. Euro NZD monthly time frame, like I've been explaining, we do have an inverted head and shoulders, and that is on the monthly time frame, so it is more powerful in the terms of the direction of the trade or the direction of the pair. We do have an inverted head and shoulders that does provide a continuation to the upside. On the weekly, we are starting to see an explosion to the upside. If we do get some retracement, that would be nice. On the daily, looks like we are starting the daily with this daily candle here. If we do get a bearish close, we can then look for the retracement before the continuation to the upside. CHF JPY monthly pushing to the upside, weekly pushing to the upside, daily starting the retracement. It would be nice to see some sort of retracement before we see a continuation to the upside. Euro GBP monthly pushing to the upside or retesting previous structure resistance. That should now act as resistance until broken above on the weekly. We are starting the retracement. And then on the daily, once again, retracement is coming. There is a possibility we could see the continuation to the upside, but it would be nice to see a break above structure before that happens. Excuse me. AUD CAD. On AUD CAD, on the monthly, we had a nice and easy, literally the most common pattern in the market. We have moves to the downside, coming back for a retracement, retesting previous structure support, now turned to resistance, and we want to see a continuation to the downside once again. On the monthly, it's extremely powerful in terms of direction. On the weekly, we are starting to break above or below some weekly structure, and on the daily, even though we've just had a move to the upside, we are retesting previous structure resistance. That should now act as resistance once again, and that could be a left shoulder, head, right shoulder. As long as the right shoulder does not break above and close above the left shoulder, we could see further continuation to the downside. So exactly as we drew out, we want to see the retest, continuation to the downside. AUD-CHF pushing to the downside, previous structure resistance in this area. We've had the left shoulder, we've had the head as more resistance in the right shoulder, that it did not break above the left shoulder, and we saw continuation to the downside, and that is on the monthly, so it is very important in terms of direction. Now if we look at the weekly, we are starting to push to the downside, creating an impulse. If you're not in, it would be nice to see a retracement before we see continuation to the downside, and that is on the weekly. On the daily, we are starting the retracement. If there is a retracement back into this area and everything is set up for the rules of the strategy, we can then look for the continuation to the downside. GBP JPY monthly pushing to the upside. We've had previous structure, push up, resistance, break above, come back, previous structure resistance, now turn support. We want to see the continuation to the upside. If we look at it from the weekly, we then can see that we've had a weekly explosion breaking above some structure, and we've also stated that we wanted to see the retracement back down into this area. So if we take a look on the daily, we can see that we are starting to get some sort of retracement, complex retracement, creating an M formation where we know we want to see a move to the upside to complete the M pattern at the neckline. So after the retracement to the downside, depending on how strong it is, we could see a continuation to the upside. AUD NZD monthly time frame pushing to the upside, weekly time frame looking to complete the weekly impulse retracement impulse pattern, the most common pattern in the market. As of right now, may have already completed it. From the daily time frame, we can see that we are retesting previous structure resistance, now turned resistance once again until broken above. Just exactly as we like to see, though, we did have the retracement after this impulse to the upside. And then we are starting to see the continuation to the upside once again. So if we get a break above this area and a retracement, we then can look for the continuation to the upside. CAD JPY monthly time frame pushing to the upside. Looks like it's starting the retracement on the weekly. Looks like we're starting the retracement. It would be likely to see the retracement, a high probability to see the retracement before we see continuation to the upside. But on the daily, we do have some sort of complex correction where if we get the retracement down in this area, we could see a possible move to complete some sort of pattern and then continuation to the downside. Euro CHF monthly time frame. We are breaking below some previous structure monthly support, which can provide a further continuation to the downside. As you can see, we had a area right in here that we did not want to see the market break below, but once we did break below that area, we started to retrace and retest that area to the T. If we look at it from the daily time frame, we can see we are making moves to the downside, that if we get a retracement back in this area, we then can look for the continuation to the downside, because it would be in perfect trend with an impulse retracement and another impulse to the downside. Euro JPY monthly time frame pushing to the upside, getting rejected weekly, getting rejected previous structure highs. On the daily, we are starting the retracement after we've had a few runs to the upside, creating multiple impulses. So it would be nice to see a retracement, a deep retracement, before we see the continuation to the upside. That is Euro JPY. Euro CAD from the monthly. If we look at it, retesting previous structure support, now acting as support once again. On the weekly, we are starting to push to the upside. On the daily, if you look at it, we are starting to retest previous structures that if broken above, we can see the continuation to the downside. But if we start to get a breakdown and break below these areas, we then can look for the continuation to the downside. AUD JPY pushing to the upside monthly, breaking above some structure, looking to start the retracement now. On the weekly, we are starting to get the retracement. If we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that we've had previous structure resistance right in this area that should act as previous structure support before we start to see the continuation to the upside. CAD CHF pushing to the downside after retesting previous structure resistance that should now act as resistance once again. On the weekly, we can see this area a little more prominent. If we did get the break above, it would be nice to see a retracement back into this area. But since we did not get that and we got the rejection, it's more important for us to wait for some sort of retracement on the daily time frame before we will start to look for continuations to the downside. Euro AUD monthly time frame, rejecting previous structure support that is now acting as support once again. Further continuation to the upside is possible. On the weekly, we just created this weekly 80 to 90% completion rate W formation. So a retracement is expected. On the daily, we are retesting previous structure highs that we are getting rejected from. So a further retracement could be expected before we see the continuation to the upside. GBP AUD. GBP AUD is breaking below some structure support, now acting as resistance right in this area. If we look at it from a weekly time frame, we can see that we are starting the retracement after we've had this push to the downside. If we get the end of the retracement, we then can look for a continuation to the downside. And on the daily, even though we are starting to break above some structure, we retested previous structure resistance that should now act as resistance once again. It would be interesting to see what the market does when it retests this area one more time. GBP CAD on the monthly, pushing to the downside, really in some deep selling territory. On the monthly, on the weekly, we just started the retracement. Even though we are overextended to the downside, a retracement is due. And on the daily, if we look at it, we are breaking above some structure, retesting previous structure resistance that should now act as support. If we do get further continuation to the upside, then a retracement and a continuation could provide a setup. NZD CHF pushing to the downside after making a move, impulse, retracing, and starting to start another impulse to the downside. On the weekly, we've just extended to the downside. A retracement is due.
It's 18:30.
Thanks, Siri. On the daily, if you look at it, we've had a move to the downside. If we get some sort of retracement right around this area, then a move to the downside once again for a continuation could be probable. Last two pairs, NZD CAD, we are making a move to the downside, retesting previous structure support, now acting as resistance over on this area. If we drop down to the weekly, we can see that this area was acting as support. Once again, we retested that area with my favorite pattern. Left shoulder, head, or retest the left shoulder without breaking above it, and then making a move to the downside. So a head and shoulders pattern. On the weekly, further continuation, and on the daily, even though we wanted to see some breaks of structure, the market is continuing trend to the downside. So if we do get a nice and easy retracement up in this area and a break below structure on the retracement, we could look for a continuation to the downside. And last but not least, I'm not going to hit the exotics today. I don't know if a lot of people really trade those, but it is nice to see the same things over and over and over to learn how to go about your day looking for trades in the Forex market. But on NZD JPY, the monthly time frame, we were making moves to the upside. It looks like we are starting the retracement right now on the weekly. As you can see, it is a little bit prominent. And then on the daily, we do have a daily M formation. So further continuation to the upside is possible. After we've had a move up, move down, move up, move down, you want to see the completion at the neckline, which could provide the continuation to the upside that we like to see. But as of right now, on the daily time frame, once this retracement ends, a continuation to the upside could be possible. So let me check the chat. You're my boy Jay Staff and his mom. Let's see him. You already know. My dude. But no other pairs anybody wants me to look at or really break down. So no real questions in the chat. And that's going to really conclude it for this Wednesday live stream. Once again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in between 5:30 and 6:30, I will be going live, doing a live stream, breaking down majority of the pairs that I have on my watch list, just what I want to see coming forward for trades on the directional bias, monthly, weekly, and daily. But other than that, nothing really too crazy. So my boy won't look at the exotics. Me and you, we're going to do that by our own and our lonesome on some private junk. We'll go over those so we can break them down real good on the exotics, my dude. But ain't nothing too crazy. I appreciate you. If you did tune in and you made it this far, make sure you drop a like. Make sure you are subscribed with the post notifications turned on so you can get notified when I do go live again, which will be Friday. This Friday in between 5:30 and 6:30. But that's it. I holla at y'all, and I hope you are having a profitable day on and off the charts. And until next time, I'm out.